Today we're going over Chapter 18 of the Silmarillion, of the Ruin of Beleriand and the Fall of Fingolfin. If you're new here, welcome to our Halfling. We talk about Lord of the Rings and a little bit about D&D, so let's get to it. So basically in this chapter, everybody dies, all is destroyed, it seems hopeless, and that's the end. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and may your homes be filled with food and cheer. Bye. Okay, in all seriousness though, it is pretty bad. So Fingolfin, the chapter begins with Fingolfin basically sort of realizing that this has been a really long amount of peace. Morgoth is going to attack probably soon, and everybody's sort of separated. And so Fingolfin kind of is telling everybody like, hey, we should probably all join back together. And it says that Angrod and Agnor, who are kind of like the first line of defense against Angband, are like, yeah, that's a good idea. We should kind of start gathering back together. But the rest of the Noldor are like, nah, we're good. We're awesome. Morgoth isn't going to come. It's fine. And Fingolfin's like, you know what, you're right. We're good. And so nothing comes of this, and there is still some time of peace. However, Morgoth is sort of itching to attack. So it's been 455 years since Fingolfin has entered into Beleriand. It's 155 years since men first crossed over into Beleriand. They are on the 6th generation, and Morgoth is ready to attack. It says that, he doesn't really, think too much of the elves. He doesn't think that they're all that grand and he can take them out pretty easily, and he gives no to little thought to the men, and that if he actually went by better counsel and waited a little bit longer, that Morgoth could have destroyed everybody and the story would have ended here. But he was ready to attack, and so Morgoth decides to attack on a cold winter night during a new moon where there's no moonlight, and makes his first attack. And it says that fire bursts forth from the mountains of iron and floods Ardegalan with lava basically, and burns the entire area to a crisp, so that here on after is called Anfauglith, or gasping dust. And many of the Noldor end up dying here, but that the mountains of Dorthonion and Eredwethrin kind of help keep the fire contained, but that the slopes are burned to a crisp, and that the smoke from this massive amount of fire just creates this mass cloud of confusion. And this begins the 4th battle, Dagor Bragorlach, or Battle of Sudden Flame. And so this river of fire is led by Glaurung, the golden father of the dragons. He's now at his full growth, and he's being followed by Balrogs, and they're being followed by this massive black army of orcs, so massive that the Noldor have never seen anything like this before. And it says that the battle lasts until spring, so like months, and that at that point Morgoth slowly begins to pull back, but even then, like, there's still attacks happening. And so the Noldor, the Grey Elves and men, are basically slaughtered by Morgoth's servants. Everyone begins to scatter. It says the Grey Elves, some go south to Doriath, where Thingol is, and so they enter in his kingdom, and then his kingdom begins to grow and strengthen, and they're protected by the girdle of Melion. Some take to the sea, some go to Nargothrond, and some go to Osirion, and there are a few who actually go over the mountains east into the wild, and here the men over there begin to hear rumors of the war. So Angrod and Agnor got the brunt of the attack and are basically entirely killed off, along with Bragorlas, chief of the House of Bjor, and those people who are basically killed, except for Barahir, who's the brother of Bragorlas. So now Barahir was actually fighting further west near the pass of Sirion, where King Finrod Felagund was going south. It says that he's cut off from his group, and surrounded at the fen of Cedric, and here King Felagorn would have died if not Barahir and his men hadn't have surrounded Felagorn and created like this wall of spears and basically cut their way out of battle with a great loss of their own. And so Felagorn is now able to escape, and he's able to return to Nargothrond, where he swears a friendship and aid to Barahir and all his kin, giving Barahir a ring to show his vow. Now keep that in mind, because we're going to be talking about that ring next Tuesday. So now Barahir is the lord of Bjor, and he goes to Dorthonion, though most of his people have actually fled to Hithlum. So now the attack on Morgoth is just horrendous. And Fingolfin and Fingon can't aid the sons of Finarfin because a host of Hithlum are driven back. So the orcs are driving, all of them back to Hithlum. And there's a little defense for Ered Wethrin. And it says that Hador, the golden-haired, at 66 years old, dies fighting for his lord Fingolfin, and that his son Gundor also dies, and that both of these men are greatly mourned by the elves. So Galdor takes lordship over Dorlomion. So Hithlum is safe because of the Shadow Mountains, because of Ered Wethrin, and that it says that orcs and Balrogs are unable to cross over these mountains. However, this means that Fingolfin is completely separated from his other kinsmen and is unable to aid them. So the sons of the sons of Feanor are being attacked and are losing just tremendously. And it says that Celegorm and Curdefin actually go to Nargothrond to seek shelter and to grow Nargothrond's strength. However, this ends up being a poor choice. They should have stayed east. And Madros, in my note, I says he's the GOAT, like he's the greatest of all time, because he has like this massive amount of vengeance against Morgoth and against the servants of Morgoth because of what occurred to him when he first entered into Beleriand, being tied up to the mountains of Thangorodrim. And so he has this like fire in him to attack these orcs, and it says that just the orcs looking at his face like scares the bejeebers out of them. So Madros is able to actually close off and protect the pass of Anglon, which was kind of open at this point, and keeping orcs out of Beleriand. And soon, however, they are overwhelmed because Glaurung comes in and kills the riders of Maglor at Maglor's Gap, destroying the lands between the arms of Gelion. And so the orcs take over Thargelion, the fortress at Mount Thuridir, and destroying the Lake Helborn. So this is Caranthir's land that they've entirely taken over. Well, Calanthir flees south with his people, going towards Aman Ereb with Amrad and Amros. And here they keep watch with the green elves. And orcs are never able to reach Osirion or Taur im Duanath, the forest between rivers. So Maglor has joined Madros at Himring. And, here they're trying to protect the land. Well, Fingolfin hears of the loss of the sons of Finarfin, of Angrad and Agnor, hears of the sons of Feanor and how they are being forced to flee their land. And he's like, enough is enough. I'm tired of this. So he decides that he's going to go and confront Morgoth on his own. And it says he gets on his trusty steed Rokgalar with the rage and fierceness of Arome. It says that when he's riding off and the dust that's created from his horse, that people think that this is Arome, and that he has the light of the Valar in his eyes. So like Fingolfin is just full of like righteous rage right now, and he rides off alone to Angband. And it says Fingolfin gets up to the gates, he sounds off his trumpet, and he shouts out to Morgoth, and it can be heard so clean and clear all through the depths of Angband. Fingolfin can be heard challenging Morgoth to single combat. And it says that, Morgoth comes. That was the last time in those wars that he, Morgoth, passed the doors of his stronghold. And it said that he took not the challenge willingly, for though his might was greatest of all things in this world, alone of the Valar he knew fear. So basically, you have this great and strong Ainur who is scared of Fingolfin, but he can't, turn down the challenge because every single one of his servants has just heard this challenge. So it says that, Morgoth accepts the challenge, and his steps can be heard like the sound of clashing thunder, and he clads himself with his black armor, and like a tower wearing an iron crown with the Silmarils in it, with his shield black with no crest, is casting a shadow over Fingolfin. But Fingolfin is adorned in this bright silver mail with blue shield and crystals bearing Ring-il, his sword, and it's glistening like ice, and he stands like a shining star under this dark shadow. And so Morgoth hurls Gron, the hammer of the underworld, swinging it like a bolt of thunder, and Fingolfin dodges. He leaps out of the way, and Gron casts a pit in the ground. And so Morgoth hurls back and goes again, and Fingolfin dodges once more. And another pit is created, and this continues on and on. Morgoth throwing and missing, but Fingolfin is able to slash Morgoth 7 times. And 7 times Morgoth gives this loud cry of anguish that casts fear in his own servants. And Fingolfin, he's growing weary. And Morgoth begins to take his shield and pushes Fingolfin down to his knees. And he does this 3 times. And 3 times, King Fingolfin stands up with broken helm and shield, ready to go again. And this continues on. And finally, through the weariness and through all the pits that Gron has created, Fingolfin trips and falls backwards at the feet of Morgoth. And Morgoth lifts his left foot and stomps it on the neck of Fingolfin. And with one last strike of hope, Fingolfin takes his sword and slashes it into Morgoth's foot, causing a gush of blood to come out, and smoke begins to fill up the pit that Gron has created. And here dies King Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor, most proud and valiant of the elven kings of old. It says that orcs do not brag of this victory, and elves don't sing, though this tale is remembered. And Morgoth picks up the body of King Fingolfin and breaks it. And before he's able to cast it over to those wolves to feed, Thorondor flies down and scratches Morgoth's face and carries the body of Fingolfin off to the mountains of Gondolin, where Turgon is. And it says that Morgoth will forever limp because of this wound, and will always feel the pain of every strike that Fingolfin has cast at him, including the scars on Morgoth's face. And so Thorondor has now carried Fingolfin to the mountains around Gondolin, and Turgon, his son, is able to build this high cairn above his father's body, and here his father is safe until the fall of Gondolin. And so all mourn Fingolfin, and Fingon now takes over the lordship of the house of Fingolfin and the Noldor, and his son, Eärenion, later named Gil-galad, remember that name, is sent to the Havens. So Morgoth now controls the Northlands, but Barahir is not leaving without a fight, and he puts up a strong fight. So Morgoth sends attack after attack after attack against the men of Barahir, slowly kind of killing them off. And so the northward slopes are filled with dark enchantments to the point where that the orcs don't even want to go through it anymore. And that any that go through this dark, dreadful forest are lost, blinded, strangled, or sent mad. And that this area is now called Delduarth, or Taur Nufuin, the Forest of Nightshade. So Barahir's fight becomes so desperate that his wife, Elmdir, the man-hearted, because she would have rather to fight next to her husband and son, gathers up all the women and children that are left, arms them, and she leads them to Brethil, where some come to live with the Halden, and some go to Dorlomin and the people of Galdor. So none of these will ever see the men that they have left behind. All of these men are slain except for 12 men of Barahir. You have Beren, Baragan, Belagan, and 9 faithful servants. Radthruin, Dairuin, Dagnir, Ragnar, Gildor, Gorlim, Arthad, Urthel, and Hathaldir. All of these men are now outlaws with nowhere to go. Their wives and children have either fled or are killed, and no help is coming from Hithlum. And so this band of men are hunted like animals. And for 2 years, the Noldor are able to defend the western pass along Sirion because Ulmo was still in the water and, protecting. So Minas Tirith still stands against the orcs, and after the fall of Fingolfin, Sauron attacks Orodruth, the warden of the Tower of Tol Sirion, and Sauron has now become this powerful sorcerer, master of shadows and deceit, lord of werewolves, dominion over torment. And Sauron attacks Minas Tirith by casting a shadow of fear over it, and all, including Orodruth, flee to Nargothrond, until Tol Sirion now becomes Tol in Gaurhoth, the Isle of Werewolves. And so now Sauron controls the tower for Morgoth, and none are able to pass this area without Sauron seeing them. So Morgoth now controls the western path, and Hithlum still stands, but Morgoth is taking over Stronghold one by one. So orcs are now practically wandering freely, and any Noldors or Sindars that they come across are taken back to Angband and basically are forced to work for Morgoth, spreading lies and deceits to all around. And because of the kinslaying at Alcolande, many believe what is being said. And the elves of Beleriand are now growing very fearful. And so anyone who leaves Angband, whether it be by the hands of Morgoth or escape Angband, none of them are trusted and all are exiled. So when it comes to men, however, Morgoth shows pity on them, and he kind of wants the men to join his side, and so he tries to kind of offer them things, and obviously just lies, and that few of the men actually listen to Morgoth and his lies and are tortured in Angband. And so seeing that he can't take the strength of men for himself, Morgoth pursues the men even more so with more hatred, and he sends messengers over the mountains. So now the swarthy men over the mountains come over, and some are said to be under Morgoth, but most, already have the desire to go west anyways, and they've heard the rumors of the land and the water and the riches here. And so the swarthy men are described as being short, broad, with long, strong arms, dark skin, dark hair, and dark eyes, and that they mostly prefer dwarves over elves. And however, Madros knows that the Noldor are kind of wearying, and that, the Edain are growing weary as well, and, they're all losing their strength. And so Madros offers an alliance with these new men and gives friendship to their chiefs, Bor and Ulfang. And this is exactly what Morgoth was wanting. So the sons of Bor followed Madros and Maglor, and they're described as following them very faithfully. But the sons of Ulfang followed Caranthir, and they are described as being faithless. So it says that the Edain and the Easterlings, these new men, don't really care for one another, but doesn't really seem to take too much of effect at the moment. And though Hador's people are basically confined to Hithlum, and the House of Bjor is completely destroyed, the people of Haleth are practically untouched for a time. But soon they begin to be attacked as well, but they fight valiantly. And their leader, Halmir, with the help of Thingol's chief of the March Wardens, Beleg Strongbow, are able to basically sneak attack this orc legion and destroy them outright. And so now no new orcs want to come through the pass of Tieglin, or the cross of Tieglin, for several years. And the people of Haleth are able to kind of watch this area in somewhat peace, and are therefore able to protect Nargothrond and allow Nargothrond to rebuild their strength and kind of to grow again. So the sons of Galdor of Dorlomian, Hurin, and Huror lived with the people of Haleth with their uncle Haldir. So both of these boys, went into battle because Huor was actually only 13. So they're both very young, and they end up getting separated from their already very small company during one of their attacks, and are driven to the ford of Brithiac, where they would have been killed if not for the aid of Olmo, who creates this large mist about them, allowing the two to escape to Dimbar. And here they wander for a little while until they're seen by Thorondor, who sends 2 eagles to take them to Turgon, to Gondolin, where no man has entered before. So here, Turgon welcomes the two very willingly, because he realizes who their kin is, and Olmo has already warned him of the danger that's to come, and that he needs to befriend the house of Hador, because eventually they'll be the house to help him when he's in need. So the two boys live in Gondolin for about a year, and it says that Hurin learns much of the lore of the elves, and that Turgon actually grows to love the two and wants them to stay, even though they really don't have much of a choice, they have to stay under law. But he loves them and he wants them to stay. However, Hurin and Hodor soon, want to go home. They want to go back to their people. And Turgon's like, can't do that, we got to keep Gondolin a secret. And Hurin and Hodor are like, we have no idea where we were. We were carried by air. Our eyes were covered so that we wouldn't freak out. We have no clue where we're at. And so Turgon's like, okay, you know what? You came by air. You can leave by air. As long as Thorondor is fine with it, that's fine with me. But I do believe that in Elvish time, we will meet again. Well, this really upsets Maglin, because he's like, why are you guys getting special treatment? I think that's dumb. And Hurin and Hodor are like, look, you have a very graceful a king who's, a really great king, but we're not going to tell anybody. But if you need, we'll make an oath to keep Gondolin a secret. So they do. They make an oath to keep Gondolin a secret. And so the eagles take Hurin and Hodor at night and carry them to Dorlomian before dawn. And here they're rejoined with their kin, and everyone rejoices in seeing Hurin and Hodor, and are asking them, like, where have you been for a year? We know you haven't been wandering in the woods because you're dressed like princes. And the two say, look, we can't tell you where we've been, just be happy that we're back. And so no more questions are asked, but many kind of guess where they've been, and word trickles back to Morgoth. So Gondolin has been kept out of the war up to this point. Turgon has been very careful about keeping Gondolin a secret. However, he knows that this is only for a time, and he is beginning to worry. So he sends messengers to the Isle of Balad, where there they can build ships to sail to Aman, to Valinor, and ask for pardon from the Valar and ask for aid. But the sea is large and wide, and it's also Aman is surrounded by the enchanted shadows, and so many of the messengers of Turgon are lost, killed, and very few actually return back to him. So Morgoth, of course, hears of what Turgon is trying to do and trying to reach the Valar, and that worries him because he doesn't know where Felaghan is. He doesn't know where. He knows of the name Nargothrond, but he doesn't know where Nargothrond is, and he knows of Turgon, but he has no idea that where Gondolin is, or even the name Gondolin. He has no idea, and so this really frightens him of all this unknown. And so Morgoth, begins to send spies out to try and figure all this out. But it says that soon he brings them all back in, now realizing the full measure of the Noldor and the full strength of the men. And so now we kind of have a small seeming peace again in Beleriand. And it says after 7 years since the 4th battle, Morgoth attacks Hithlum. And in the attack on Ithil Sirion, Galdor, Lord of Dorlomian, dies protecting the fortress of Lord Fingon. And it says that Hurin, just now entering into manhood, drives the orcs from Eorithrin all the way to Anfauglith. and King Fingon and his host are fighting off Morgoth for a time, but are completely outnumbered. And suddenly the ships of Círdan appear and come to his aid, and the Falas, force Morgoth and push his forces all the way back to the Iron Mountains. And so Hurin, son of Galdor, now leads the house of Hador and Dor-Lómian and serves Fingon. And it says that during this time that the outlawed men, those 12 men of Barahir who have been wandering, are now all killed except for one, his son Beren, who escapes into Doriath. And there we end. So this was a long chapter. I tried to get through it as quickly as I could to not keep you guys held up, but there was so much information in this chapter, and seriously, it just feels like everybody dies. And a lot of people do, and it's just massive. It's massive. And yeah. So, and there's one more massive battle to come, but it's going to be quite some time before that battle occurs. I did want to mention, though, that, Ulmo is a great Valar. He's one of the greats. He's really walking that line, trying to obey Manwë by not really intervening with the Noldor and the elves, and yet still intervening. So props to Ulmo. He's awesome. And Fingolfin, holy cow, that scene, I don't know if you guys could tell, but that scene got me really excited. That was just perfection. Amazing. What a way to go. And it's good. It's all good. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I for sure did. Come back Tuesday if you want to hear more about that ring Barahir received from Finrod Felagund. And come back next Thursday if you're excited to get into Beren and Luthien. It will be a 2-part chapter because it is quite a long one. But it's a good one, so come back next week for that. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful, blessed week, and may your homes be filled with food and cheer. Bye!